Okay, so the task was to build a simple backend. So here it is. This is how our repository looks. We have the env files, gitignore proc file for deploying railway.json to deploy on Railway, which is a hosting platform. And the main logic lies behind the app folder. So let's quickly go through it. The config file which we use to load the env once, and then we simply import the settings class to fetch our env variables. Nothing fancy, just saves our time. We don't have to load env in all the files. Then next we have the models files where we define our schemas, how our data should look like, how its min value, max value, the format, the type, and if it's not according to how we want it to be, we simply raise an error. So it's helpful because the incoming request from the client, right? We should always sanitize and validate it before we proceed further, because anyone can uh, obtain our API and send some unstructured data to our backend, and that would create problems. So we don't want that. So yep, these are the schemas we have defined. And next we have our Supabase file. We have used it as a DB. So because it's free, it's cheap, it's built around Postgres, so it's good for me. Uh, we have our custom exception handler. This is how we make our own custom handler. So we simply uh, extend the exception superclass, and we inherit it, and then whenever we uh, face an error, we simply raise this error. So it's just good practice to make a custom handler for error handling. We have our repository class. So first we initialize our client, and then we use the client to make a request further. We only do it once. Then we have a close connection method, which we won't really use, so never mind. We have three methods which we will be using to query our database. So we are not going to write raw queries in our main API handler, which won't be very good because it will make the file very big and chunky. So we would only expose these three functions in our main API handler in the main file, and that's how we don't mess things up. So let me quickly show you what it really does. So it first it takes the first method. Let's take the get summary method. Okay, the get summary method, it takes the user ID, and it calls an RPC function. We have used RPC functions to make things simple and easy for me. The RPC function, right? So for example, this is our this we have two tables, the stats and the transactions. You can see it here. We have made an index for the ID and the timestamp because we are going to use it very often. So it's a good practice to make those attributes uh, index those attributes. Okay, so we have our get summary function. It simply takes the ID, which is a text, as an input, returns a JSON, and first we validate our input, and if that exists in our DB, then we simply query it and send the response back, and if it doesn't, we simply return zeros and null. Simple as that, nothing fancy. Then we have our get ranking method. Okay, so the that RPC function, right? Where is it? The get ranking. Oh, second, there were I was not able to figure out how do we rank these users. So we could have the most amount the user purchased, we can rank according to that. But I did not actually. I used a simple formula, right? Which is this. So we compute a score for each and every user, and we rank them according to the score in descending order. So you can go through the RPC function. It's right here in the schema of SQL. And the last function is record transaction, which let me show you. Record transaction. Yeah, so here it is. This is where we handle duplication, concurrency, and rate limiting. We simply take these values as inputs. We respond the JSON. We declare these variables. First, we validate the input twice because we have already done that in via the pydantic validator. We do it again, and first we check whether these are same or not. So if we are sending the same request again, of course it will be a duplicate, right? But if the request ID is same, if the request ID is same but everything else is different, which then we throw an exception. Okay, so this is how we mainly handle duplication. And you see this right here. This is how we lock the row, right? So if three requests arrive, only one will get the row at a time. So that's how we handle concurrency. So that not so that we the processes don't write and read at the same time. So it helps us to maintain integrity, and we don't end up making multiple writes at the same time and disrupting the data. So, and this is a very simple rate limiting, because I would have used Redis or message queues for rate limiting, but since it's a simple backend, so I thought, okay, it's a simple backend, we should use it something very minimal. So it checks for 5 requests in 10 seconds, and that's how we rate limit. It's very simple, nothing fancy. uh, so yeah, that's how we do it. You can read the entire function in the schema file. Let's move forward to the main API handler. So this is how we make an HTTP server in Python, right? So the lifespan function, this is where we make the app which we use to mount, get, post the different request, and we mount the asset once, because we don't want to fetch multiple files again and again using the get request. It gets really long. If there is no endpoint or just the root endpoint, we simply return our UI. So we could have used something known as the UI route, but we didn't. We are all right with so this is our UI. It's the simple UI. Okay, nothing fancy. Here we send the request to our backend. So here, fetch. We have an API method where we set the header to JSON, which that's how the backend was. It's a JSON request, and we use it to send request from our UI, from this HTML file to our backend. So nothing fancy. Uh, and this is a basic health endpoint to check whether the backend is on or not. So if it returns a 404, the backend is off. So simple, normal endpoint. not very useful. Then we have the transactions endpoint where we simply take the request, we pass it through our request validator, it sanitizes the input, and then we send it further. We use our app state, which I showed you earlier here. We make the state right from the settings, the class, from the config, and we simply call this function, which will call the RPC function, which will process this request and send data accordingly. Simple as that. This and the same goes for summary, and the same goes for ranking, right? So nothing fancy. It's just we were not writing raw queries. We are simply using the DB functions we made, right? So let me show you it in action. Uh, this is our simple UI. Let's give some random name to our ID, set some amount, and let's make a new request. Okay, let's submit a transaction. Okay, created. We send the same request again. Says duplicate. Now we keep the ID same. We keep the ID same, but we change a few things. Only one would work actually, but yeah, let's see what happens. Okay, that should be three. Okay, it returned this. Now, how we are service. So, in our record transaction query, right? Yeah. So it raised this exception, which was caught by our two API or two API error function, and then we simply returned our error. So that's how it works. We can also fetch some data here if we want to fetch about the data of this person right here. Okay, so let's do it. Load summary, and it will come everything there is to know about this person. So yeah, this was the project, and if you have any more question, you can feel free to reach me out, and thank you very much.